that record button. And today's session is over Intro to Zoho Books and Migrating Accounting Systems. And the Zoho team will be doing the Zoho Books portion, and then Josh from Preston and Nigley, he'll be doing the Migrating Accounting Systems. So before we get started, we need to take care of a few housekeeping items. So today's webinar is hosted by the Zoho Finance Partner team, and you can find us at zoho.com/CPA. Accountants and bookkeepers are welcome. So if you're an accountant or bookkeeper joining today, we'd love for you guys to go to that site and see if you'd be interested in becoming a partner. And today's webinar is presented in Zoho Showtime. And a few things about Showtime. If you look at the left-hand side, you can see the questions tab and the handouts tab. The questions tab is where you can ask us questions about either Zoho Books, accounting questions, or really anything pertaining to Zoho. And today we have a dedicated Zoho Book support team member in the presentation, so he'll be able to answer anything within Zoho. And we have obviously Val Steed, our resident CPA, so he can answer technical accounting questions, and also Josh himself can answer technical accounting questions. And if you look at the bottom left is the handouts tab, and there you can see today's presentation, also a link to our zoho.com/CPA site. So today's session does qualify for 1.5 CPE credits. In order to earn that CPE credit, you have to attend for at least 90 minutes and answer 4 out of the 6 polling questions. And the polling questions will look like this. So I'm just going to launch this doesn't count as towards the CPE credit, but here's the first polling question. So what is the largest fish in the sea? So it's just kind of a goofy polling question, but later throughout the session, they're more technical, and we're just kind of asking more about your experience with migrating in Zoho Books. So the correct answer here would be actually whale sharks. It kind of threw me for a loop too. I actually learned this funny story is I have a 1-year-old and I'm reading a bunch of books, and I've learned so much from the his little animal books and all that stuff. So it's pretty funny that even now I'm still learning, and I forgot a ton out of grade school and all that. So that's awesome. So, and also in order to receive that CPE credit, you have to complete the evaluation at the end of the session. And so whenever I end the session, the evaluation will pop up. So make sure you answer that. And if you're not here for CPE credit, we ask that you fill out the evaluation as well, because it helps us better improve our sessions in the future. Now today you've heard a few voices. So we have the Zoho team and also Josh here as well. So the accountant team over here at Zoho, we have a resident CPA is Val Steed. Val, are you there?
I am here, but it helps if you click unmute. Good morning and welcome everyone. Hopefully this will be well worth your time. My background is accounting, and especially accounting tech. I was in the industry many years, and I've been involved in many programs, including Intuit's Pro Advisor program, Sage's Accountants program. That's what we're really trying to build here at Sage. So my job coming here was to help Zoho build an accountants program. Reach out, as you'll see in a minute, we'll show you our site for our accountants program. Reach out to bookkeepers, accountants, CPAs, anyone involved in professionally working on finance and accounting.
Yeah, thanks for that, Val. And we also have our lead support finance partner member is D-Raj VN. D-Raj, are you there?
Hear me? Yeah. Can you hear me, Nathan?
Yeah, I can hear you. Great, D-Raj, to see you here. And he'll be kind of in the background answering questions throughout the session. And if we have a more technical question later throughout the session, he'll be able to jump in as well. And sorry, I didn't let you introduce yourself. If you want to go ahead and introduce yourself, you can.
Yeah, so I basically take care of partner support for Zoho Finance Partners. I'm the dedicated guy for that. So feel free to drop all the questions that you have on Zoho Books on the questions panel, and let's make this session as useful as possible for all of us.
Yeah, thanks, D-Raj. And he's being a little modest. He can answer really pretty much any high-level accounting question whenever it comes to Zoho Books, and he's been a great help for us. And he's also been with Zoho Books since almost a beginning. So it's been a great resource for us. We also have my colleague, Tala Bakar. He's ahead of the program manager over here on the Zoho Finance Partner team.
Hey, Nathan. Thank you so much, everyone. You're probably confused why we have so many folks in this presentation. We're all here to make sure that we can answer all your questions and you have the appropriate resources. A lot of times, we'll be hanging out in the background. I'll be starting with a demo of Zoho Books before I pass it on to our featured speaker today, who is Josh Blesnick.
Yeah, thanks for that, Tala. And my name is Nathan Rogerson. I'm over here the marketing team for Zoho Finance Partner team. And I can help you with any questions pertaining to events and marketing for Zoho Books, and also help onboard partners as well. So let's go ahead and introduce Josh Blesnick.
Hey everyone, can you hear me?
Yeah, Josh, we can hear you loud and clear. You want to introduce yourself real quick?
Yes, I can. So thanks everybody for the opportunity. I'm really looking forward to this webinar. And my name is Josh Blesnick. I'm a consultant here at Preston Nigley in New York City. I have been working with the Zoho team probably for past 8 or 9 years, and really excited to be here.
Yeah, thanks for that, Josh. And he's also been working in the public accounting field for about those 8 or 9 years. And so he has a ton of experience. And I think with migrations, I think last time we talked about how many you've clocked, it seems over 60 or close to 100, right, Josh?
Something like that, yes.
Yeah. And this is their firm as well. And I'll let you kind of talk a little bit more about what Preston & Nigley does.
Sure. So Preston & Nigley is a full-service accounting firm, audit and tax, located in New York City. I would say we're somewhat of a boutique firm because we really try to, give the clients as much attention as they need and kind of work with them from the incubation period of a business starts until, they're a very large firm, from 1 employee to 1,000 employees. Also, Preston & Nigley has a consulting arm, technology consulting arm, where we specialize in implementations, migrations, conversions, as well as user-based training within Zoho Books. And typically my Zoho Books work that I've done is migration, moving people from QuickBooks to Zoho Books, as well as setup and training.
Yeah. Well, thanks for that, Josh. And we'll let you kind of continue the session after Tala does his demo of Zoho Books. And so he'll be in the background. If you have more technical accounting questions, he'll be able to answer them in the questions tab on the left-hand side. And so as for today's agenda, we'll start off in just explaining what Zoho is, and I'll let Val Steed kind of step in and clear that up for everybody.
Yes, we thought, it's important for you to kind of understand what Zoho is as a company so you can get an idea of what the vision is and a little bit about where we're going and, what is a Zoho of all things? Well, it's a software company that's been in business for over 25 years. We started out with CRM and really had a really successful launch of that. Currently, our whole world is up to like 55 apps and growing. But it's really important for you to know some things about Zoho. Privacy is a huge deal for Zoho. We don't allow any trackers in our software. We don't track you. We don't allow any trackers. We are completely GDPR compliant and more. We're way beyond that because we're really crazy about privacy. Our software only runs on our own networks. Our parent company is a global network company that has hardware and infrastructure around the globe, and we run completely on that network. So when you're on our network secured, you're not going to get tracked by Google or Amazon or Microsoft or any of these other people. Privacy is a huge deal. Also, we are privately owned. And that means the private ownership is beholden to no one, and they're committed to run this company for as long as software and cloud computing exists. So, that was one of the key reasons I decided to leave a business that I had loved and built for 25 plus years and join Zoho, is because of their dedication to this industry. What you see in front of you right now is a little bit of a flash of the whole world of Zoho. And there actually is 6 kind of groupings, if you will, or suites of our software. You've got sales and marketing, you've got IT and help, human services, custom solutions, email collaboration, which, by the way, for those accountants on the call here today, we have our own spreadsheet, we have our own word processor, we have email, this solution can be a complete office solution. But what we're really here to talk about today is the finance suite, and particularly books in the middle of the finance suite. Tala will introduce that to you a little bit better here in a slide or two, but I just wanted to kind of give you an idea of who Zoho is and all of our different apps, and try to make sure you're not lost in all of that. One thing that is wonderful, though, we do offer a Zoho One pricing, and I'll let you look into that in your area, or if you're looking at that, licenses you for all those apps. And then what you can do then, what's great about that low cost, all you can eat thing, is you can grow into these different apps as you need to. Now, our group, we're specifically focused bookkeepers, accountants, CPAs. Welcome. End users welcome, but this is our site where we're trying to build out a program. We're eventually going to have high-end specialized support. We're going to try to come up with some certification. We're doing some new things in here in this group. So that's our focus. We hope to really protect and partner with as many of our tech partners as we can, and be a real option for them to come and build their practices around supporting our solutions. And many of them start with the finance suite and books, and they end up migrating into a bigger picture. That Zoho One thing I mentioned, that's a bigger picture, folks, and it really becomes something that can be a great way to make a living consulting on Zoho solutions. So that's our program right there. If you're welcome, you want to join the Zoho Finance Partner Program, go to that website, zoho.com, CPA, click in there, sign up, join. We'll help you if you have any trouble, because we'd love to have new partners and folks that are willing to get involved in this process. Yes, there is referral fees, money that you can make reselling Zoho solutions.
Yeah, thanks for that, Val. And I also launched the first poll question, and it's just asking if you're interested in becoming a finance partner, or if obviously if you're just a Zoho customer, this doesn't necessarily pertain to you, but we would also love for your accountant to join, because if they have access to the Zoho program, they can, access your account a lot easier than, just accessing your account. It allows some checks and balances, so you don't have to share passwords with them or anything like that. So let's give this poll question another 10 seconds or so. And then we'll let Tala get started on Zoho Books. All right, great. Well, let's go ahead and get Tala started. I know he has a lot to cover, and so does Josh. So cloud accounting with Zoho Books. Tala, are you there?
Yes, thanks, Nathan. So yeah, I'm gonna mainly go through the actual Zoho Books product. We'll spend about 30 minutes or so going through the application, just so that we can make sure everyone's on the same page. I may be able to show you some features you may not have had a chance to view in the past. Before we do that, I just wanted to go over what's on the screen right now. So Zoho Books is the central accounting system that Zoho has. It's our double entry ledger, general ledger system. It really is competitive with products like QuickBooks Online, Xero, Sage, all those applications that you may be used to. Now, all the applications around it help expand modules within Zoho Books. So for example, there is a recurring invoice module inside of Zoho Books, but you can expand that in Zoho Subscriptions, which is a dedicated subscription management system. And the same goes for inventory, expense, as well as some of the other tools. So Zoho Payroll allows you to, of course, run payroll. That's in a limited number of states right now. And then Zoho Checkout is basically a tool that lets you simply use a web preview of a checkout page, basically, and let people purchase directly through their own phone or computer. Now, we're going to spend our time inside the product. So let me actually share my screen with you so that you can view Zoho Books directly. Let me go ahead and open that for you. And you should be able to see my screen now. And so we're on the main dashboard. We're just going to go through some of the different modules here inside of Zoho Books. And I'm going to try to point out a few things that are going to be helpful for you along the way. Now, when Josh jumps in after I finish, he's going to focus specifically on migrations, but I want to make sure you have everything set up appropriately before you do. So very quickly, the main dashboard, of course, gives you a bunch of information that you'll need on a day-to-day basis. And most of this information allows you to actually dive down into more specific reports. So for example, if I'm taking a look at my total overdue receivables, which this business clearly has a lot, I can hover above this point in time, get the exact amount here. And then if I click down, I can actually see the breakdown based on aging details. And if I select one of these, like let's say the last 15 days, it'll take me to a report for aging details. And of course, I can further drill down into these specific invoices, these customers, customize these reports, and so on. And we'll take a look at the reporting abilities in a moment. Now, you'll notice that payables on the right-hand side have the same sort of functionality. Below that, cash flow statements can be generated by clicking on any of these particular months. And you can see the opening and ending balances right there very quickly. And you also notice some different toggles for date ranges. So these are pretty standard features across the different reports you see here listed on the dashboard. Now, you can customize a few of these, like for example, banks and credit cards that you want to see here on the dashboard. You can select which ones you'd like to show, and then projects that you're tracking will appear here as well. And we'll take a look at projects under time tracking in just a moment. Now, but this is, of course, the main basic dashboard. Before we jump into a few of the different modules, I just want to go over settings for a quick second to make sure that you have all the modules that you'll need to get started. So click on the gear icon, and we're going to jump down into preferences. So preferences is basically where most of the main settings inside of Zoho Books are listed, and then there are more specific ones listed here on the left-hand side. So the modules that you'll see here on the center of your screen, you'll want to select the modules that are most relevant to your business. So for example, you may not give out retainer invoices, and you can basically reduce the clutter on your screen by unselecting this. In our case, I'm going to leave all of these selected just because I have these enabled, and some of you may want to go through some of them. But you'll definitely want to spend some time here when you first set up your Zoho Books account to make sure that all these questions are answered in the correct way. So for example, if you do accept retainers, what account is that retainer payment going into? It defaults to unearned revenue, but there may be a different account that your business needs. So take some time to go through all of these. Do you give discounts at what level? Is sales tax inclusive in your item, or is it exclusive? So take some time to go through here. When we jump back to kind of the main navigation panel, you'll see that the second option is items. Now, items is both services as well as products that you sell inside of Zoho Books. You'll notice a few extra modules that I may have that you don't have in case you're following along. And that's because I have an integration with Zoho Inventory set up. So I've got some extra modules like composite items and item groups. But if you go ahead and click on the items module, you'll notice you can switch between goods and services. Ensure that all of these custom fields are set up properly, because when Josh talks about migrating list information, so lists of items and services that you may have, you'll want to make sure that these are already set up here so that when you import that data, those fields already exist. And you can customize these fields by going under settings, and you'll see under items, there's an option to add custom fields here if need be. You can make those fields mandatory in case of, those items may need extra information. You'll also notice that there's purchase information here, of course, if it's physical items. And then down below, if you need to track inventory, when you're bringing in stock for the first time, you'll know where your opening stock is, and keep track of that, get notifications for reorder points and so on. So this is really important to do. The other list that may be important to you once you've kind of got some of your basic information set up is price lists. So price lists basically allow you to have custom prices for some of your items or all of your items based on individual prices or a percentage markup or markdown. And you can also do volume pricing. So let's say you sell at a wholesale discount to certain customers that you may have. You can actually go ahead and create a volume pricing price list, create a scheme here, and then apply this to those customers so that when you're checking those customers out, you're creating invoices for them, it already reflects those prices that you've set up. So that's another place that's going to be important when you talk about importing list data, and I know Josh is going to spend some time going into that. The banking module. This is going to be a really important point to make sure that your bank accounts are set up here. So one of the most important things in having these bank accounts set up is having the correct login details. So if I go ahead and click on Add Bank or Credit Card at the top right, you'll see here that you can select some of these most commonly used accounts, but there are thousands of different institutions here. So most credit unions are listed here as well. Of course, all the big banks are listed here. But for the most part, when you log into an account, you can bring in usually about 90 days or less of historical data. So if you're going to be bringing in anything older than that, you're going to want to bring in actual import files from your bank account. And to take a look at what that may look like, if you have a bank account that you've already created, you're going to go ahead and click down on Settings, and then you'll see Import Statement. So all the modules that Josh is going to go over on importing are going to have some sort of import functionality, whether it gives you a sample file to take a look at, or it actually specifies, what are the actual file formats that we can support. And then on the following screen, when you select a file, it'll actually let you match the column headers from your document with the required fields in Zoho Books. So that's going to be the basic process that you'll see across all of the different modules here. The banking module has a ton of great features like being able to match transactions. Right now, I don't have a lot of transactions in this account, but when you select a uncategorized transaction, what Zoho Books does is it tries to find all the relevant sales or purchase information to match that with. So in this case, I don't really have much, but it'll try to use the date range that the transaction occurred in, the total amount, and make an educated guess as far as what could match to this. When you have all of those deposits, customer payments categorized, you're then able to actually reconcile accounts. So clicking down on the settings option here, you'll see there's an option here to reconcile. What you would do here is you would basically put your closing balance for this account. So let's say for this period, I have a closing balance of $155,987, and I'll hit Start Reconciliation. And I'll basically go through my statement, go through all of my records, and clear out the transactions here. And as I do, you'll see the difference comes down. And of course, if you have a difference at the end where you're not able to meet the closing balance, you'll need to go back and make sure all the transactions have actually made it there. It's a great place to ensure you have all your information before moving on. And doing this on a monthly basis is excellent. So having that option there is pretty useful. And that's mostly it for kind of the basics of the banking module. There are some other features that I won't go over, but I'll just mention, like, for example, creating transaction rules. So if you have expenses or even purchases or sales data coming in on a regular basis, you can actually apply rules to automatically match the bank transaction data with the actual invoice or purchase order bill data that you might have in Zoho Books. So
I wanted to mention too, Tala, with that recognizing transactions, it puts it into a categorized page, and it makes it a lot more efficient whenever you're going through and trying to reconcile your bank accounts and everything.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you for mentioning that. Kind of separating categorized and uncategorized helps make sure you know exactly which transactions are the ones that need your attention at that time.
Just helps streamline it. But
Yes.
yeah, I'll let you continue.
No, thanks for bringing that up. So that's going to be mostly it for the basics of the banking page. There are going to be some other things you'll notice, like if you integrate different payment processors here, they have clearing accounts where the funds are held before they actually end up in your bank account. Those may populate here, as well as maybe a petty cash account if your office has some cash on hand that you need to keep track of. Now, moving on to the main kind of meat and potatoes of Zoho Books. the sales module. So you'll notice there are a bunch of different options here, for creating different transactions. But first, let's take a look at customers. So the customer information that's brought in is, of course, as good as the information that you'll have in your old system. Now, this is another place where you're going to want to take a look at, creating any custom fields, any custom information that needs to be recorded before you bring in that list data that Josh is going to talk about. So I can actually do this again by taking a look at the fields that already exist here, and then if there are custom fields, going into settings, creating those, and seeing those populate here. So this is where you'll take a look at all of that. One of the features of Zoho Books that a lot of folks find really useful, and you may not all know about, is the portal functionality. So Zoho Books has a customer portal. The portal allows you to invite customers to a dedicated login that allows them to manage their interactions with your organization. So, if they need to pay invoices, they can do that. If they need to make partial payments, keep track of hours logged on a project. You can even submit time entries for their approval through the portal. And the way that you invite someone to the portal is once they are already a customer in Zoho Books, you'll click down on More, Configure Client Portal, and you'll see the email addresses associated with this customer. If I just hit save, it'll go ahead and send the default invitation. And under email templates, which I'll show you in just a moment, you can actually customize all of the verbiage for those emails. You can also set a password for them beforehand. And if you do that, you can actually provide that password to them through a different means, and then they can log in. As soon as they log in, it'll prompt them to change that password. So that portal is a very, very useful part of Zoho Books. I definitely recommend trying it out. If you're curious to try to access that portal, you're going to go ahead and, again, go to Settings, Preferences, and then you'll go to Portal here. The portal URL is automatically generated. You can actually customize this by creating a custom domain. So if you already have a domain for your business, you can do some sort of portal.mybusiness.com, and instead of having it say books.zoho.com. But if I go ahead and create a new tab to show you what this looks like, you'll see that this is the login for this portal. It doesn't say Zoho anywhere. This is the logo for this organization. And if I go ahead and log in, you'll see that a customer would be able to view outstanding invoices they have, if they have any available credits, if there's any retainer payments they've made. And you'll notice I have subscriptions here because my account has subscriptions active, and this customer has a subscription that they have associated with their account. But if they need to make any payments, you'll see they have an option to pay through credit card or PayPal, which I've selected, and you can select whichever payment gateways are relevant to your customers. So there's a bunch of great resources here, as well as viewing their own statement. I definitely recommend utilizing the portal. This may be a great way to help those frequent customers have access to this information on their own. Now, Nathan, did you need to launch a poll question?
Yes, I was actually just about to interrupt you. So let's go ahead and launch the second poll question. And it's just really, we're just asking, if you've ever used Zoho Books and how new is this to you? And we'll let everybody know as well. We do have a sample Zoho Books. I believe if you just kind of go to the web page, it kind of just prompts you and asks if you want to just play around in it. So you can, if you want to play around with some of the features, you can do that kind of before you start digging in deeper, like Tal is doing. So I'll give this about 10 more seconds or so.
And just while you do that, Nathan, I'm taking a look at the questions panel, so I'm going to highlight a couple of these before we go on. Okay, I think we're ready to move on. Did you want to share those results, Nathan?
Oh yeah, I shared them, so people kind of see them already.
All right, so just before you go on, I just want to point out a couple of questions I saw in the questions panel. Just taking a quick look real quick. So one of those was about master bank accounts and sub accounts. And I'll put this up real quick. quick for everyone to see. So yes, if you do have a master account and sub-accounts, what you are able to do in Zoho Books is you'll log into the master account and it'll list all of the sub-accounts underneath it. So if you'd like to sync all of those sub-accounts, you can. You do have to be careful where, depending on the institution, it may create multiple different bank accounts, or if the master account has all the transactions, you can just link that one account so all the transactions come into one place. But yes, Zoho Books does handle this. And when you log in, you'll be able to see all of those accounts.
Tyler, just let you know, about 50% or so have never used Zoho Books.
Perfect.
So, and this is obviously a great session, and this is recorded if you want to go back and watch it later on.
So we'll come back to see if there's any other questions. There's definitely more I've seen there, but I want to make sure I have enough time to go over everything. Now, moving down the sales module, what you'll see here is the most important module, of course, you're going to spend most of your time in is invoices. Now, there was a question earlier about sales without invoices, and you can do that directly from banking, but that's not the way Zoho Books is really designed to record transactions. For the most part, you almost always need an invoice to collect payment in Zoho Books, especially if you're trying to use any of the payment options that are integrated, using the portal, anything like that. So these other modules are there in case your business actually has a need for them. So estimates, or sometimes people call these quotes, these can be sent out. This will be identical to how an invoice is created, but what it allows you to do is actually have a customer approve an estimate. And then once they approve the estimate, you can choose for this estimate to automatically be converted to an invoice. You can even partially collect a payment from this estimate. So let's say once they accept the estimate, you want to collect a 25% payment, you could create a retainer to do this. Now, the different options you'll see here are pretty standard. If I have custom fields for estimates, those then of course show up here. So if I select this customer, it'll populate their billing and shipping information. And of course, I've got the automatic generation of the estimate number. I can set an expiration date here. And you'll see, again, these are some custom fields that aren't going to be relevant to everyone, but you'll see those listed here. You'll also see a option to select a price list. So remember we talked about price lists earlier under items. You can associate these directly to a customer, and then those price lists will automatically be applied. In this case, this customer doesn't have one. So if I wanted to select one of these price lists, it'll let me actually apply a new price list, and then it's going to change the rate here. So you'll see that this is now 134, whereas without the price list, it goes up to 149. So these are the standard kind of information. You can also add images for these items, descriptions that come up. Again, this isn't something that's listed here, but you do have all of those abilities. This is a really specific accounting function, but the default account for all of these transactions always goes into the sales account. If you ever need to change that, I can go here to the far right, and you'll see there's this ellipsis icon. If you click on it, it'll let you see additional information. And when you click on that, you are actually able to, whoops. Oh, there we go, down here at the bottom. So it has reporting tags that show up. And then if there's ever a need for selecting different sales accounts, you can actually do that as well. Reporting tags are something let's focus on for just a quick second. So reporting tags can be set up again under settings, and you'll see reporting tags. These are very similar to classes in QuickBooks. So basically what that means is you can create categories that transactions get lumped together in, and then you can run reports on those categories. So for example, I can have a default tag that I apply to different items. Let's say I'm selling services and products. I could lump all of my services together with a certain tag, and I'll lump all my products together with another tag. Those will automatically get applied. And then when I run let's say I run a P&L report, I can actually run a P&L on a specific set of those products based on these filters. So if I actually had, let's say, a type of product tag, these are custom, I've created these exactly how I wanted. I could select type of product and say, is, in my case, services, and then run a report specifically on services only, or on products, or any other combination of tags. You can create any tags that you would need. These are totally customizable, and you can group together any sort of transaction. So whether that's a service or product, you can group customers into an entire tag. You can have multiple tags applied to a customer. So maybe you group them by region, maybe you group them by, some other categorization that you have, and then you can run reports based on those tags as well. There's a lot of flexibility there, especially when it comes to how you view your reports. So that's basically what tags allow you to do. There's a lot of different use cases I haven't covered, but just something I wanted to mention to you. Now, the other main module you'll see here are sales orders. So sales orders don't have to get used unless you're using the Zoho inventory product. But just to keep this really simple, because not everyone knows, a sales order itself doesn't actually accept any payment, right? Only invoices have payments recorded against them. Sales orders basically make a log of a sale that occurs, and then you can either process the entire sales order and convert it to an invoice, or you can do a partial payment of that invoice. So you'll see here, for example, this sales order listed here, sales order number 59, has a half moon here because it's a partial payment. And if I go ahead and click on this, you'll see that the total amount for the sales order was $1,141, and we received an invoice for only $725. So there's still a balance due on the remainder. This is really helpful if you are selling products and you can only deliver certain parts of the product. So maybe there's a few items I have right now, but a few items that I still need to order, which is how this back order option shows up here. But sales orders are a great way to kind of manage those packages. And you'll see this package option here is, again, because I have the inventory integration. But the main bulk of where you're going to be doing most transactions for most businesses is just in invoices. So you want to spend some time taking a look at these fields, make sure they're appropriate. And then if you are importing any list data that Josh is going to talk about, you're going to want to make sure that everything is set up here appropriately for that. So the other options you'll see, payments received, right? So if you need to record payments against invoices, you can do that directly from the invoice module. If I have this invoice, I can come here and record a payment. Or if I'm doing that for multiple payments, I can go ahead and come to the payments received module, select a customer, and if they have multiple invoices, I can pay against them if I received a check for that. I record, what sort of payment method was used, is there any reference number, that sort of information. So that can also be recorded here. And the other ones are other modules. Recurring invoices is exactly what it means. So if you need an invoice to repeat for, on a certain frequency, so every month you're going to charge a customer for, let's say, the next 6 months, you can create an invoice to do that. I mentioned subscriptions, but that's, if you have a whole set of products and services that customers are self-checking out, that's what that product allows you to do. And then sales returns and credit notes are pretty self-explanatory as well. If you need to create either of those, that option is there. But again, any modules that aren't going to be relevant to you, go to settings and preferences and turn those off. The purchases is essentially the mirror image of that. So your list of vendors would be listed here at the top. So vendor information is another place you're going to want to make sure you have all the custom fields that you may need for your business. There's also a vendor portal. It's the exact opposite of what the customer portal is. It allows vendors to view purchase orders that you've sent them, and they can view the status if you have made any changes or requests on those orders. And then, of course, the ability to record expenses is where you'll find, where you can record mileage, expenses from credit cards or otherwise. And you can actually do all of this through Zoho Expense as well, or even through the Zoho Books mobile app. So if you find that expense management is a big portion of your business, you might have employees recording expenses. That's where Zoho Expense comes in. This is a tool that allows you to have reimbursements. So let's say some employees may be using personal funds, you need to reimburse them. Zoho Expense allows you to do that through ACH. Or if you just need to use the option inside Zoho Books, but let's say you want to take pictures of your receipts, you can use your Zoho Books mobile app to do so, or you can use some of the other functionality here, like uploading it from the cloud, or documents, which is basically a storage folder here inside of Zoho Books. This is another place you're going to want to make sure if you have any custom fields for expenses, that those are all set up before you bring in that list data as well. And the rest of this is pretty self-explanatory. The one that I'll focus on for just a moment are purchase orders and bills. So if you do have inventory that you're selling, this is where you're going to actually create those orders. So purchase orders, of course, are sent out to your vendor, and then those are then converted to bills. So whenever those purchase orders come back and you convert them, you receive the invoice from the vendor, you'll create a bill for it. And that's actually where, once you record payment, and you can actually record when the products have been received, that's when your inventory will go up. So for inventory management, Zoho uses first in, first out. That's the default here inside Zoho Books, and that's the one that's the only option that's listed there. So that's important to know. So when you run any reports on inventory, it is based on FIFO. And some of the basic things that become really helpful, and there's so much more to Zoho Books that unfortunately we can't just go over in this short period of time. But let's say you record vendor credits or customer credits. Whenever you're creating a bill, you'll be notified that, hey, you already have credits for this particular vendor. And that may be something that you forgot about, or you'll see here, I have credits available for this vendor. They may have given it to me, but they may not remember it. This allows you to keep track of them and actually only pay how much you need to pay. The other modules here, time tracking. This is where you can create really simple projects for customers. So these projects are based on a few different billing methods. So if you are recording projects based on overall project hours, and you have a certain hourly rate, like you're charging, let's say $65 an hour, you can actually do that. You can also do this based on task hours. So if I have multiple tasks here, these can have their own hourly rates. And then finally, you can do this based on staff hours. So if I have different hourly rates per staff member, I can set that up here as well. Again, very simple project management here. Different users can record their time and create timesheets as needed. And then you can basically create invoices based on all of that time that's been recorded. Again, the focus here really is on simple project management. If you need anything more complex, Zoho actually has a whole nother tool which is much more sophisticated, but also much more complicated too. So this is for simply recording time against a project, like most accountants would do. Most lawyers, any kind of service-based business that is billing based on time. This is where you're going to spend a lot of time. These projects are associated to customers, and then once you generate those invoices, those go directly to those customers. Whether it's inside the portal or just emailed to them. The accountant functionality here is where you'll create some of the things under the hood, like journal entries, setting up your chart of accounts. I know Josh is going to go over several of these things, so I'll let him explain that in more detail. And then finally, reports. So reports here inside Zoho Books, there's something like 5 dozen or more reports that are available out of the box. Most of them can be customized as far as reporting tags go, if you need to compare with previous years and periods. But all the standard reports that you'd expect are here. And then the other option that you may find useful is if you need to create custom reports, we have an advanced analytics tool. It's actually a whole other product called Zoho Analytics that's tied into Zoho Books. And you can create your own dashboard. So for example, I have this financial health dashboard. It basically brings in raw data through Zoho Books, and I can create custom reports. And you'll see that information populate here. So this is something that is for those users that need a more sophisticated reporting system and the basic reports just aren't going to cut it, that's where advanced analytics comes into play. So that is a very quick kind of run through of the main modules. I apologize, I know that was very, very fast. There's a few other areas that you're going to want to focus on, like templates for all the different documents and emails that go out. That's all available under settings. And I'm going to include a link, hopefully, when it goes out to you guys, of a much more detailed deep dive into Zoho Books that'll go over all of these different modules in more detail. But I want to make sure we have enough time to give Josh to go over migration, since there's about 45 minutes left now. So without further ado, I'll let Nathan launch. I believe there's a poll question, and then Josh will be up to actually jump into migrations and how to do them here inside Zoho Books.
Yeah, thanks, Tala. Thanks for going over everything. And one thing I wanted to touch on, I'll go ahead and launch the poll question. This is a third poll question, but one thing I wanted to touch on is with analytics, that was something that Val touched on earlier about if you go into Zoho One and you purchase that plan, it's included with Zoho One, so you have access to Zoho Books and analytics. So if that's something maybe in the future you're interested in, Zoho One's not necessarily the worst way to go versus paying for Zoho Books and then paying for analytics later on.
There were a few questions on job costing and project costing. I'm not sure we're going to get to that today, folks, but we have a fairly good job costing. It's not great for detailed manufacturing, distribution, or line process manufacturing, but fairly strong job costing, let's say contractors, projects, stuff like that, pretty well handled.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I just wanted to add on to that. Like, if you're looking to manage jobs and then track all income and expense associated to those jobs within the job, and then run a P&L at an individual project level, then we do handle that within Zoho Books itself.
Thanks, T-Raj. Excellent. So, folks, like I say, it's a very robust accounting finance suite, especially when you start to take into account the other apps that kind of play into that. For example, we did have a question on GPS tracking and mileage. Well, that's really a Zoho expense linked into Zoho Books. So you might end up with more than just Zoho Books in your subscription, or you might end up saying, well, I just want the whole Zoho One.
Yeah, exactly, Val. And I appreciate you kind of walking us through that. But right now, it looks like it's Josh's turn to kind of talk to us about migrating accounting systems and go over that for everybody in the session.
Check and see if there's Josh. Let's make sure he's live and good. Josh, you there?
Yeah, I'm here. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yeah,
right. Yes.
Yeah, we can, Josh. I'll go ahead and transfer over session control to you so you can control the slides. And also, if you want to show a demo or something, you can do that as well.
Awesome. Give me 1 second. Okay, great. So thanks, guys, for everything and for the opportunity. If there's any issues with my sound or anything like that, feel free to let me know. So today I'm going to focus on migrating from a prior system into Zoho Books, but also the main focus is to set up your Zoho Books either from scratch or from another system, and be able to make sure everything is set up properly. So on the first slide, I apologize. On the first slide, migration path. So here, before we start the migration or going into Zoho Books, we have to understand what you have in your current system and to make sure that we can either replicate it or have a alternative. So the first thing on my list is custom integration. So if you're using any custom programs, payroll integrations, accounts payable or accounts receivable integrations, we want to make sure that either there's another solution with Zoho, which they do have solutions for all of that I mentioned, or we find another solution that works. The next one is that we want to have a clean cutoff date from the legacy system, from your prior accounting system, to the new system, and make sure that all the numbers and data is brought in from that cutoff date. The next thing is we want a clean legacy system. So if we're moving from QuickBooks to Zoho Books, we would want all the accounts to be reconciled, the balance sheet and the P&L to be complete, and all the activity to be there so we can compare the activity in Zoho Books and make sure everything looks correct. The other thing is list data, which we'll talk about in detail in a second, which is customer lists, vendor lists, item lists, as well as any tags that you guys use, and make sure that they're set up properly in Zoho Books as well as your chart of accounts. Also, we have open balances, so any open balances for any accounts, customers, vendors, etc., open transactions, as well as a data migration check, which is when we would reconcile both systems, and then you are ready to go live and be able to work in Zoho Books. So here is a list of a couple integrations that I mentioned prior: payroll, inventory management, CRM, accounts payable, accounts receivable, Office 365, and any other integrations that you guys have. Now, what's good about Zoho is a complete operating system for your business. So any of these third-party apps that you're currently using, you can use within Zoho. And I will say, all of the third-party apps that I'm calling them third-party apps, but all the apps that Zoho have that would be solutions to this, such as CRM, payroll, 1099, third-party links, are excellent. So if they are third-party applications that Zoho recommends, and or Zoho applications themselves, we can find a solution with any integrations that you guys currently have. So moving on, the next step is the chart of accounts. So the chart of accounts obviously is one of the most important parts of the accounting software, because that's where everything is posted to and everything is tracked. So typically during a migration, I spend a lot of time looking at the chart of accounts from the legacy system into the new system, how we're going to set it up, and how it's going to look, as well as if there's any accounting issues prior, we can correct that going into into Zoho Books, and make sure that they're correct. Any issues that you had in QuickBooks can be, as an example, can be fixed and corrected in Zoho Books. So here is the migration path in terms of what needs to be brought into Zoho Books, and how do we start using Zoho Books. So we've done many webinars in the past in terms of migrations and strictly on the migration aspect, and Tala did a very good overview in terms of what Zoho Books has to offer and how we look and view different things in Zoho Books. So I'm going to focus more on how do we set it up, as well as migrate our data. So on the list side, we have customer lists, vendor lists, and contacts. And then from a transactional accounting standpoint, we have our trial balance as of the cutoff date, accounts receivable, accounts payable, outstanding bank transactions, and we have to make sure that they're entered in. Now, if you see under open balances, I have control reports. So typically during a migration, or if you hired anybody to do your migration, we need a clean trial balance, accounts receivable aging detail, and accounts payable aging detail to be able to tie back from our previous system, which we're going to use the phrase legacy, into the new system. So then after everything is put in, we can check the data. We can see if there's any mismatch or anything that has not been put in correctly, and be able to view that and make sure that both systems match activity, and the trial balance matches as well. And then we're able to go live. Now, typically, we, as a accounting firm, Presti and Nigley, try not to run parallel, but there is two methodologies in terms of go live. The one methodology is that we would run parallel in the sense that you would be using your legacy system for a week, 2 weeks, and use Zoho Books as well to make sure you feel comfortable and everything looks good and that your users are able to navigate. Or we would provide training and create a clean cutoff date, let's say as of November 31st, or November 30th, and on December 1st, you would come in and Zoho Books would be the new system being used. Now, in that scenario, all the data would be brought in during that weekend in terms of the cutoff for that, let's say, month activity, and there won't be any downtime, and everything would be as smooth as possible. So before we get to the questions page, I'm going to share my screen, and we are going to run through some examples and going through Zoho Books. So here we are within Zoho Books, and this is the first place to start in terms of setting up Zoho Books and migrating data is the chart of accounts. So the first thing here is if you go to Accountant, you have the option to go to Chart of Accounts. And if you view the chart of accounts, it will show all the account names and account types, as well as the account code. So when you do an import into Zoho Books, in any module within Books, we have a gear icon here that gives you the option to import chart of accounts, export chart of accounts, or export current view. Now, if we click on import chart of accounts, it's going to bring us to this page. Now, I personally have done hundreds and hundreds of imports into Zoho, and there is definitely a skill to learn in terms of how the data should be modified and put in correctly on a import sheet to make sure that it can be put into Zoho the way that it should be. So if you notice here on the top, there's a sample file. And this sample file will give you the ability to view what is the format that Zoho looks for when you try to import. So right here, I have all of my sample data, my sample imports for all the different transactions that Zoho has. So if we look at the chart of accounts, the chart of accounts sample import will show us that we need the account name, the account code, the description, account type, parent account, who's the parent of the account number, currency, open balance, and is it a debit or credit? So I'm going to show you some sample data, and we're going to go through how to import your chart of accounts and how to modify it. But before we do that, let's talk about open balances for 1 second. So typically, in all of the accounting realm and world, you have a feature in Zoho Books called open balances. And this open balances gives you the ability to enter in your open balances as of a specific date and allows the open balances to sit, for each account. Typically, what I like to do when it comes to open balances is I refrain from using this module. Now, this module is an unbelievable, great module, and it allows for you to set up your opening balances. However, typically from an accounting perspective, when you create an open balance from your open balance module, it creates a entry on the balance sheet called open balance equity or open balance adjustment. So the first place that I start with is taking a trial balance from your current software, QuickBooks, let's say. And once we have that trial balance, we enter that in as a journal entry, back out accounts receivable and accounts payable, and enter in the actual AR and AP invoices and bills that need to be entered. And I can show you how that would look momentarily, just to send, to start that process. So here, this will be our chart of accounts. Now, if we go into QuickBooks, let's say, we're going to use that as an example, and we're going to take our chart of accounts and we took a Excel copy of it, and this is our chart of accounts that need to be imported into Zoho Books. So if you look here, this is the exact sheet that you would get coming out of, let's say, QuickBooks or any other software. And it shows your account, the type, detail, which Zoho Books does not require that, description, and the balances on the account. The one thing that we noticed right away is that the parent-child relationship in Zoho is created by having the parent in a specific column. If you look in QuickBooks, as an example, the parent-child relationship is separated between a colon. That this landscaping services is landscaping services, job materials, which is a parent account, a child account of landscaping services. So what we would need to do is, if we go to our modify tab, we would separate out the parent-child relationship. So landscaping would be here, and this would just say job materials. Once we separate that out, we then would have a import sheet where we can then import this into Zoho Books. Now, I have seen many different consultants and other people not realizing this and having naming conventions of accounts show landscaping, job materials, and then have the parent account as landscaping services. You can do that, but typically this is how the relationship is handled in a different system, and we have to modify the relationship between the parent, the parent-child account to match how it would work in Zoho Books.
Yeah, thanks for showing us that, Josh. I need to go ahead and hop in here and launch the fourth polling question.
Sure.
And that's one thing, I'm sure whenever you see a customer that does that sort of import and all that, I'm sure you have to go in there and do your work your magic, right?
Yes.
Okay, so really, I'm just asking them, Josh, just so you know, the polling question is asking, have you ever migrated before? And it looks like the majority of everybody is no, this is the first time. So obviously this is a great session. Why else would you attend this session? Sometimes people ask us, but you never know. Sometimes there are a few people who've done it before, but not necessarily into Zoho Books. So it's a great help that Josh is here to kind of show us the perks and the some tips and tricks on how to migrate into Zoho. So I'll give this about 5 more seconds and you can move on, Josh, okay?
Sounds good.
All right, you're good to go.
Great, thank you, Nathan. Okay, apologize, I was just taking a drink of water. So once, taking a step back, migrating your data is definitely something that can be done yourself. And I have, excuse me, I have assisted clients with migrations in terms of formatting data and everything like that. So it really depends on how you want this done. But there's definitely lots of different intrinsic details that go into migrating data, which we'll cover some more going forward, that needs to be understood to be able to do this either yourself or with a consultant. And by doing this with a consultant also is your involvement is you typically very high, in the sense that you would be involved with a consultant of checking the data and having user acceptance to make sure that whatever you're migrating over is actually what you want to come into the new system, and to correct or change anything on the accounting accounting side. So that said, we have, this would be our chart of accounts, and we would go into Zoho Books, and we can start importing. So we would go out of this and go into our chart of accounts. And once we're in our chart of accounts, we can import our chart of accounts and click on choose file. So I'm going to choose my file, which is Zoho templates. And this is the chart of accounts sheet that we just looked at. And we are going to press next. Sorry, it has to be in CSV format, and that was an Excel file. So this is our CSV file. Press next. And then we're brought to this page. Now this page is the mapping of how you want to map anything that you want to import into into Zoho Books. Now, by looking at the mapping sheet, if you notice, there's a couple key things that are in red that are obviously mandatory to set up your chart of accounts. One of them being account name and the other being account type. So whatever we call these headers in our Excel sheet will show up here under the tab, and we will be able to click off what we would like to bring in. So account name, this would be account. This would be account type. So we would say type. And if there's anything else, parent account, debit or credit, etc., and we would press next. Once we press next, it'll show us all the accounts that we had on the sheet and if there were any errors or any issues. And if we notice here, there's 92 accounts on the sheet and 77 of them are ready to be imported and 92 and out of 92. So if we click on here, this will show us all the error messages. And we will be able to view them to see if they're anything we should be concerned about. So one of them would be, let's say, value in the field does not match with the data type supported. There might be an issue in terms of how it's formatted on the Excel sheet, and we would go back into the Excel sheet and check. Also, Zoho support is very good with these error issues. And obviously you could reach out to Diraj and his team if there's any error messages that you don't understand. Another trick of the trade, which sometimes when I speak to other people about this, they're surprised because sometimes if you're trying to import, let's say, a 5,000 line item sheet, and let's say 10 or 100 of them got errors, if you copy this into a notepad, and here we have this in a notepad, it formats the same. And if we go into our Excel sheet, here is what we were trying to import. I'm just going to make the columns a little larger. This is what we were trying to import. If we add the row columns here, we can put in our error message and actually create a VLOOKUP to be able to filter out our error messages and look at those specific errors that we had on our sheet and correct them if we need to. So this is just a trick that I came across. If you notice, these NAs are fine. These were ready to be imported. And these are the types that have any issues that we need to fix. Now, I use this methodology for invoices, bills, bill payments, all different transaction types. Okay, so that's how you set up your chart of accounts. Now, if we go into our chart of accounts, you'll see that we have everything, all our chart of accounts would be here, and we can click on the account to view any activity or anything that's in here and drill down if need be. In The next step in terms of setting up your company and migrating your data is customers, vendors, and items. So the same thing that we did in the chart of accounts will be the same thing, excuse me, for customers and vendors. We would go to the gear icon, we would go to the burger icon, the 3 lines on the top, and go into import customers. It will bring us to this screen where we would choose our file, and we would then map accordingly to bring in our customers. And the one thing that you should be aware of is if you make any issues, mistakes with your import, let's say of phone numbers or emails, list data in Zoho Books gives you the ability to have this option of skip or overwrite. So as an example, I have a client that I did a migration for, and they had 1,000 to 2,000 customers, and they wanted to correct the terms that their customers had. So I exported the customer list, and they fixed the terms. And if we click on overwrite, we can import that back to repopulate the customer terms. So for list data, you are able to overwrite and change anything that needs to be changed in the customer record, but you wouldn't be able to change the customer name, as an example. So if we look quickly, sake of time, we would have a customer list similar to this, and we would look at the sample file. And once we have our customer list, we would go into Zoho Books and start importing. Now, what I like to do is any changes that you make in the list data, we like to create a sheet where this would be our original, this would be our modified sheet, where we would modify the data, and then our import sheet, which would be here. So since once we're ready to import, we would then create a CSV file for the Zoho Books import and be able to do that. So if I just go into Excel, create and save a CSV file, we will be able to import this. So once you are ready to import, click choose file, wherever the file is saved, which is this one, and we press book 1, and it will let us know if there's any issues that need to be done, such as there's an empty string of data here that can be imported, and we would have to change that because all the columns need headers. And once we have that, we're able to import. Okay, so once we have, and this would go the same way with the vendors. So let's just quickly bring this to the next page, and we will see that display name is important, and then we have our any other detail: email, phone number, billing address that needs to be mapped here, mobile phone, email ID, etc. Anything that you want on your customer record. And once you have that done, you're able to press next and get it ready for import. Now, if you're doing excessive imports in for customers, or you're getting lots of error messages and you need to go back, there's a button right here that says save these selection for using during future imports. And this is very important. Sometimes I forget to check that off, but you won't have to redo your mapping each time if that's checked off. Okay, so once we have our customers and our vendors in, and we feel comfortable with it, and we look at our customer list, and this is everything that we had in our legacy system, and we're ready to start invoicing them and creating invoices, the next step is that we need to have our items. So we would go into our items, go into items here, and we can import the same way by going into the gear icon and look at the sample sheets if there's anything that needs to be put in. And then once we have invoices, once we have the items, we can then bring in invoices if we have any open invoice data that needs to be brought in. And that would be under sales. And we would go into invoice module.
Hey, Josh, 1 second. Sorry to interrupt. I got to launch the 5th poll question real quick.
No problem.
Sorry about that. But you're doing great so far. Definitely, I know you're helping out a lot of customers and accountants who might not be struggling, but I know whenever they start migrating and everything, I know it can be very stressful. Definitely with this question I'm asking is, what about migrating worries you? And the answer that always wins is importing accurate information. And like, obviously, if you do some of the checks and balances that Josh is laying out, it can help mitigate some of those errors you might have. So I'll give this about 5 more seconds, Josh, and then you can keep going, talk about items. Or
cool. Thank you, Nathan.
All right, looks good. You're good to go?
All right, awesome. So now that our commercial break has finished, once you have the all the data, your list data in, you're ready to start entering in transactions. And invoices can be imported the same way. And we would make sure on the invoice that we include the invoice number and the item that is here. And we would do this the same way for all transactions, where we would go to the gear icon, click on import invoices. It will show us this where we can view a template of what should be there. And I'm going to look at my invoice template. And this will show us all the data that needs to be there. Invoice date, number, what the status is, which is not a mandatory field, the customer name, it links to a purchase order, item name, item description, quantity, rate, etc. So after we bring in all the transactions, invoices, and bills, bill payments, the main thing is we want to make sure the data is correct. Now, once we do that, we can look at a trial balance, which is right here under accountant in reports. And when we click on the trial balance, it will give us the end account number or total of that specific period. And typically, we would want to tie back everything to the legacy system. So we're doing a, let's say, 2-year migration. We would start with, let's say, 2019, 12/31/2019 balances, and we would bring that into Zoho Books. And then after, we would bring in all the activity, invoices, bills, bill payments, expenses, etc. And each month, each year, we would check the trial balance to make sure all the expense accounts and the income accounts match to what the legacy system says compared to Zoho. The best way to compare is account by account. So, we would say, okay, this is our accounts receivable is $29,000. Does QuickBooks show $29,231? Yes, we're good. Next account. So this is typically time consuming, but the import process of the migration is the easiest part of the entire process, because all we're doing is pulling data, looking at data, making sure it's correct and everything matches and maps to the trial balance of the legacy system. But once we have everything in the new system, we have to make sure all the data went incorrectly. And there are definitely issues sometimes in terms of account names being similar and account names not being mapped properly, or items being posted to the correct map, to not the correct account. So it's very crucial that whoever on your team, as the client, or during the migration process, reviews and checks the data and makes sure everything is pointing into the right place. So as an example, if we go here into items, each item has a specific sales income account that it's associated to. So we look at 10 yellow, and I'm just going to click on edit. We'll see that this is linked to the sales account. Now, if we, after discussion with David and Gerard on the AC Wine Cellars team, that's the sample company that I'm using, they tell me that in the past they linked yellow wine to their sales account, but they want, going forward, everything to be linked to yellow wine income, because they want to track their yellow wine separately than all the other wine that they sell. And we would have to make sure that this is mapping to the correct place and the correct income account is here. So I know I went through a lot of information quickly, but I do think that when it comes to migrations and moving data from one system to another, and to make sure everything is correct and right and set up properly, it's very important to get either a partner, a Zoho partner, or someone else to help you and guide you through the process. And also, there's definitely major intrinsic details in terms of inventory, payroll, that need to be addressed from an accounting side of it, to make sure all the data is put in correctly. Now, the other aspect is typically your legacy system is your book of record as of a certain point. So as an example, I did a migration for a company, and we brought 2 years worth of data over, and they went live January 1st, 2021. So all of January's data, January going forward, Zoho is their new system. But if they ever got audited, or somebody needs to look at other financials, those financials match from their legacy system into Zoho, but their actual book of record is their legacy system prior. So why bring in historic data? And the historic data realistically is just for use and understanding of being able to view historic records for customer sales, expenses, etc. So the next aspect after making sure all the data is correct is being able to use the system and feeling comfortable and replicating different functions that you did in your legacy system in the new way that Zoho Books does it. So just to recap, once we have all of our items, our customers, vendors, chart of accounts, our list data, and then our items in there, we're ready to start creating transactions, new transactions, and also entering in the historic transactions via import. So I do thank everybody. I'm going to turn this over back to Nathan. I know we have 5 minutes left. I just want to thank everybody for attending this webinar. If you guys have any questions in terms of migrating data or setting up Zoho Books, please feel free to reach out to me. I would love to have a conversation and help in any way, shape, or form. I have done this numerous of times, so I definitely understand how the data should be formatted and put into Zoho Books. and what Zoho Books is capable of in terms of moving data. So feel free to reach out, and thank you guys very much. And also, I hope you guys can still hear me. Just one other thing that I wanted to mention is that Zoho support team is very helpful when it comes to any questions or anything like this. I know it was a lot of information thrown at you in a short period of time, but hopefully it was helpful. And the migration aspect is very easy and seamless, but it does help to have somebody help you with it.
Okay, folks, I think we're really right close to the end here. And I'm sure that Nathan's going to be jumping back in to close things up. Josh, I appreciate your information. I think you've done a great job here today. And I think we got all the questions answered. We will be sending out, by the way, a recording link for the recording and also CPE certificates. Those of you that are actually in here for CPE, please make sure that you stay on the session and fill out the evaluation form following the session here. So hopefully we can move that forward. Tala, are you still in right now? Josh, you can hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay. I just want to make sure what's going on with the session, because it appears we may have lost Nathan here right at the end, and I believe he has the moderation control. Nathan, hang on. I think he might be coming back in, folks, to refresh a poll or fix something here. So it looks like we might have a little technical glitch there with Nathan, and just wondering if Tala's also there. I don't think Tala has control, though. I think Nathan has control, Josh.
Okay.
By the way, I really do appreciate everybody's comments and questions. I think really, for the most part, we got most everything solved. I do understand there was a comment about the search capability limitations as a whole, and it can be a little tricky. I appreciate that. I don't really have great answers for you there. I think just pretty much what we were mentioned by D-Raj. So anyway, just give that a shot. So what you can do is best to find stuff, because I think they're always improving. They're always improving the AI behind Zia, and I think we'll see that as best we can. So I think we have Nathan back up, I believe. Nathan, are you there? And let me also do a quick check with Tala. Tala, are you there?
Yes. So it looks like all the poll questions were already launched by Nathan.
Okay. Are we good on polls?
Yeah, we're good on polls. The only thing left for folks who are looking to get their CPE, just make sure you keep your browser screen open, because once we end the session in 1 minute, an evaluation will pop up on your screen. You do need to complete that evaluation to receive your CPE, which I'll send out once we get all the evaluations in. I'll usually send that out in the next hour and a half or so. And then you'll also receive a link to this session later today. So if you have any questions, you'll be able to go back and check those, but you can always contact us as well. All right. Well, that brings us to the end of today's session. Thank you everyone so much for participating. Thank you, Josh, for going through that detailed guide to migrating accounting systems. We hope to see you again on the next webinar. And again, if you would like to reach out to us directly, please visit zoho.com/CPA if you're an accountant or CPA looking to become a Zoho partner, just like Josh. Thanks, and see you again soon.